Jesus.
What's up, guys? We're back with another episode, and I've got a special guest in studio with me today. We are going to be focusing on suicide prevention and awareness, and specifically tying it to the light of the gospel and Christ. Often this is unspoken, and yet it's a powerful way that so many people can overcome things like anxiety and depression when they are battling them. So without further ado, we are going to dive right into this discussion, so stick with us. Hey guys, and welcome to another exciting episode of Your Life, God's Word. Thanks for joining this time of relevant conversation and scriptural application, where we apply God's Word to the most important areas of life: God, family, and community. We pray this broadcast inspires, encourages, challenges, and blesses you in every way. So without further ado, let's dive right in to this week's episode. All right, guys, we are back and ready to dive into this thing. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, depending on where you're listening to this bad boy at. Definitely get this out there. I do think this is going to be a wonderful testimony and very helpful to people as they go through the struggles of life and battling things like anxiety and depression, definitely suicide and suicidal thoughts. So without further ado, I give you the one, the only, Aaron Becerril. Aaron, thank you for being here in the studio with me.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome. This is my first podcast experience, so it's a little bit different.
All right. Well, you make videos and stuff, though, so
Yeah.
you're at least used to the audio part of it, right?
Yeah. It's still a different experience because with a video you can see yourself on the video and stuff like that. Whereas this, you're just kind of talking to a mic and having a normal conversation, but you're all geared up, and it kind of just feels a little bit weird. But
yeah, it'd dissipate. First few times I did the podcast, it was very, very weird. Like, you're just like, wow, I'm talking to
no one,
absolutely nobody for like an hour. But you'll get used to it. So tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of what's your where you are, what do you do, who are you, man?
Well, I've been coming to Bread Breakers for quite a few years now. One of the worship leaders here. But as far as, who I am, I do real estate. I'm 28 now. I just turned 28 in June. I'm married.
Pushing 30.
Yep, I know. I feel it. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Hannah. She's also a Sunday school teacher here, second grade teacher in Bellevue, and we've been married for 3 years. I love life. I couldn't say that before. I know that's why we're here today to discuss this. But before, I couldn't give you the definition of happiness, and I can gladly say that it's a miracle that I'm standing here today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Or sitting here, either one. No, we're not making the guest stand in the studio, folks. So you mentioned, just talking about, you love life now. You're enjoying life. I know we were talking a little bit before. So you just recently had a living life by doing a death-defying experience, basically, right? I want you to talk a little bit about that.
So, everyone has that, I have my biggest fear is fear of heights. My wife has been asking me to go skydiving for a while, and I'm just like, no, I can't do it. Now I'm kind of like, I could do that. It's easy. We just went down South Florida, and we went diving with sharks. When we signed up, it did say, cage. You can go in the cage, and if you chose to, you can go out of the cage. And I was like, oh, I might get out of the cage if the conditions are right. Well, we get out there, and they're like, oh, nope, no cage. We don't have a cage anymore. That was kind of, a scary experience, But it really, when I jumped in the water, and I've shown you a video, when you jumped in the water, and your initial fear is when you first jump in and you can't see anything. It's like that fear of unknowing what's going to come, like some kind of sea monster is going to, the Kraken's going to come up from the abyss.
I get that when jumping into the pool, so yeah.
It was just a really eerie feeling. And then when you first see that shadow of a shark, you're just like, what am I doing? And the girl that was the first mate that was out there, she thought I was drowning, but it was a malfunction with my gear. I was like, I could swim, But it was an incredible experience. It really kind of makes you appreciate life, especially when you get out and you're like, man, I'm alive. It's like you have a real, just appreciation for God's creation too. I mean, it's just you're swimming with an apex predator. I mean, it's not like it's a really cool experience.
Not the same as
I would recommend it.
As swimming with the dolphins.
No, yeah. I know some people are like, oh, I went swimming with stingrays. I was like, yeah, that's cool. But did you swim with a shark?
That's where it's really. So you didn't get in the cage. There was no cage.
Nope, no cage.
Wow.
And it was funny because I was like, it was 3 couples, so it's like 6 people, and then the captain and the first mate. And
okay. So you really could just like, as you're going out there, you just like look at the people you're with and be like, I don't have to outswim the shark.
Yeah,
I got to outswim these people.
Yeah. There was the one girl though. The guy's like, all right, who wants to go in? And I was like really hesitant. I was like, I'll do it. And this girl was like, I'll do it. And she was like ready to jump in without any gear. And I was like, go girl. I was like, we'll see what happens.
Right. Yeah.
Watch for a few minutes.
Yeah. You guys jump in. We'll be right behind you.
So.
Wow. Yeah. It sounds like a lot of fun, and I've seen some of the videos and stuff, but I don't know that I could get in with no cage, knowing that this animal could just come and try to take a chunk out of my arm.
What the coolest thing though, and I was like, man, I guess Summer's prayers were answered, because the second boat that went out, because there's 2 boats that went out, the second boat went a little bit of ways off. They didn't see any sharks, and we only saw 2. And from when I looked at the Instagram, and even like the day after when we got back to Key West, I looked, they typically see like 10 plus bull sharks, 2 tigers, a couple reef sharks, a couple silkies, and we only saw 2 lemon sharks.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's, but I actually liked it though, because I can kind of keep an eye on both sharks, because that was the scary part, was when they would swim right by you, they would go behind you, and you couldn't really like turn too much
because all the gear and everything.
You wanted to make sure that you're facing a general direction, and you can't keep turning. You're gonna get sick. And that was the scariest part. Is like, is it behind me? And there's one in one of the videos I was looking at last night. In one of the videos, it did scare me. You can see I even jumped the GoPro because it literally went like 2 feet next to me, and I was looking the other way, and all of a sudden I saw it in the corner of my eye, and I thought it was Hannah, and it was the shark.
Oh man!
I was like.
Oh, man. Yeah, living life by staring death in the face.
Yeah, I was like, it's a great experience, though. I would definitely, given the opportunity to do it again, I would do it again.
Yeah, I think, it looked really cool. It definitely looked really cool, and you can see how close they really are swimming to you. It's like, whoa. Wow. So before we get too far into this, where can people get into contact with you? On Instagram, Facebook, stuff like that?
I have like 4 Instagrams. and it's like, I was like, why do you have so many? I was like, well, I got one for the Jeep. I got one for, my personal. Then I got one for business. My personal one, you know what? I don't even know what it is. It's Aaron BEC, I think. Yeah, Aaron BEC 92.
92.
Yep. AARON BEC 92. And then you can just look for me on Facebook, Aaron Becerril.
Cool.
But yeah.
Aaron Becerril.
Becerril.
There it is.
Yeah, that was a cool part. We went to a couple Cuban places down there in Key West, and I actually did
legit
not know,
Cuban places.
I need to do some research on this, but I did not know Ocala was actually some of the original founders were Cuban cigar factory workers.
Really?
Yeah. Ocala was previously known. I talked to the guy, and he showed me the books and everything. There's a doctor. I took pictures of it because I want to order it online and do some more research on it. But Ocala was formerly known as Martin City. And
wow.
And it's from I believe like Jose Martin, who led like the revolution in Cuba.
What?
He was here quite a bit.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
I thought it was kind of cool.
We'll definitely be fact checking that,
yeah,
but
exactly.
It sounds cool.
I know. I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah. I'm gonna look into
Austin,
it.
Texas. Oh yeah, Martin City.
Yeah, they tell everybody the same thing. Yeah, that's awesome. So obviously September is Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month, and then this week specifically is the kind of the week designated for that. And so I know a little bit about your story and everything, and I wanted to bring you on, just kind of ask you some general stuff, just get you talking about, what you went through and how everything happened. So wherever you feel like you want to start, I don't know what you feel like, kind of the starting point is leading up to where you'd like to get to, but like walk us through kind of your personal story, how you got to that darkest point, what that was like, but just walk us through it, man.
So, just without leaving out too many things and telling you my whole life story, it started when I was a young teenager.
You didn't want to start with like your mom and dad met.
Yeah,
We're going to be here a little while.
1900. No, so
back when Ocala was Martin City
and dinosaurs ruled the earth.
Right.
No, so I was a young teenager, and I remember there was some things going on with my family, some stuff, and it caused some friction in the church that we were going to at the time. And basically, long story short, I kind of got like pushed aside. I wasn't. They had told some of the young people at the church not to hang out with me. I was a bad influence and whatnot.
Your parents told you that, or
no? The leadership of the church had told the young people, the parents of the young people, to not hang out with me because I was a bad influence, and I wasn't doing anything. It was I was being punished for the sins of my parents, basically.
Yeah.
And so as a young man, you would find out the youth was doing things, and they would kind of keep it a secret from you. And you would find out, and you're like, oh yeah, sorry, man. And it was kind of like so I was left out of a lot of things.
Oh my goodness.
And after a while, it started taking its toll on me. So I, as a young adult, I started dealing with depression. I didn't really know what it was, and I started. I remember there was one particular time where I was playing with a knife. And I remember because I used to collect knives, and I was like 13 or something. I thought about
Me too. Used to love to go to the flea market.
Flea market was the place.
I was 12 years old, 14. They'd sell me a crossbow. I'm thinking, are you insane?
I know, man. I have so many daggers and stuff. I'm like, where did I was like, I was a kid when I got this.
Yeah.
But I had this knife, and I remember like cutting myself accidentally, and then I remember like, what if I cut myself and it wasn't an accident, and I just took my life. And
how old were you when you were thinking this?
I was about 13, maybe.
Oh my goodness!
And so, I started dealing with some of that stuff, and I was, I remember, So, long story short, I had gone to the leadership at the church, and I told him, I was like, hey man, I'm dealing with some of this stuff, and he told me at the time, he's like, just pray about it. Well, that didn't sit well with me because I was like, you're a shepherd, you're supposed to be watching over your sheep. God put you in the position you're at to handle stuff like this. I'm a kid and I understand this. I'm like 14, 15 at the time, maybe.
Yeah.
And he's like, no. He says, just pray about it. And it was kind of like brushing me off again.
Whoa.
And so at that point, I told my mom and dad, I was like, I'm done. And so we tried going to another church, and they basically said, we don't want any friction with the other church, so we would appreciate if you go back to that church. And that's when I told my mom and dad, I was like, I am done. I was like, you can go to church as much as you want to, play their games. I'm not going to do it. I'm never going to step foot in church.
So you're 13, 14, 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You have some traumatic things going on at home or whatever, stuff probably that even caused friction at home itself.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Then at church, they basically go and tell young people and parents, hey, don't have anything to do with this kid.
Yep.
Then you start suffering from, you didn't even realize necessarily what it was, but just like depression, a little bit of that going on. You go to the leadership, and they're like, yeah, just pray about it. We really don't have time for you.
I'm crying in front of this dude, like a teenager crying. And I'm not just like, hey, man, I'm...
Oh, okay. Whoa.
I'm not like, hey, Steve, like, I'm dealing with this, can you help me out? Like, I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. I want to kill myself. I remember sitting there and looking around the office. I mean, it was a very, like, it's still with me.
Yeah.
And just crying my eyes out. And he could basically just, like, turn me away. I'm like,
wow.
Are you kidding me, dude?
And then you go to another church. Is that what you said? You went to another church?
Yep.
And they were like, well, you just need to go back to the church you came from?
We went there a few services, and then one service, the leadership had pulled my mom and dad aside, and I remember just sitting in the back row, like, where'd they go? They just left me in church.
Right.
And they come out, and they were just shaking their heads, and we get in the car, and I was like, what was that about? And they were like, well, they said that, they don't want any problems with the leadership of the other church, so they just, they understand why we're coming here, but they would really appreciate if we would try to go and make amends at the other church.
Unbelievable.
I was like, you guys can. I'm
wow.
not. And so, towards that, I was getting like 15, 16, and that's when I got like one of my first jobs. And that's when things started kind of going downhill for me, just like spiritually and everything. Because I grew up in church and I was very prayerful. I mean, even as a young kid, I fasted. I did all this stuff, and I had a really good relationship with God. And when I got a job, it started, the small things, staying out a little bit later. You would curse, and you're like, oh my gosh, and then it started, where I stayed out and I would have a couple drinks. I'm underage, drinking and stuff like that, and so that became a huge issue for me. And it also became a pride issue, because I used to really love working out, and every post you saw it was me just trying to show my muscles. And now I look back, I'm like, you didn't put a shirt on, bro. But it was one of those things that I realized, I could see now the decline, and because I was posting so much on social media and stuff, I had attracted the attention of the wrong types of people, and so this girl hit me up from Virginia. And I remember, basically I left everything behind.
Oh, wow.
And moved to Virginia. Because I had nothing here that I really wanted to stay for. So I moved to Virginia, and that relationship didn't work out, but I was kind of stuck up there. I was like, well, now what do I do? So I got a job. I had thought about going to the Marines. I needed some medical transcripts from Florida. It was just too much work. I was like, I'm a lazy person. I'm not going to do all that. Because I broke my arm and stuff. They needed all the medical transcripts to show, the break-ins and all that stuff.
Oh, wow.
I then was like, all right, let me get into, law enforcement. I really wanted to do law enforcement. So ended up getting a job at the jail and was a CO for a while. And being a CO and being in that line of work, you work very long hours.
Yeah.
You're in a lot of solitude. I consider myself an inmate sometimes, and I was like, oh yeah, I spent time in jail, because it really was. I would sit there 12 hours. The luxury I had was I got to go home in a nice bed, but I would sit there for 12-hour shifts and no one to talk to. You talk to the inmates, but these people are, they're not really people you want to carry too many conversations
right,
with.
Yeah, you don't want to. You don't really want to open up to an inmate.
I mean, I was attacked a couple times while I worked there, so you have to be very cautious and stuff. And so I saw some things too, some people that tried, taking their own lives in cells, and just some of the things that they were in jail for, some of the stuff that starts messing with you. And then it just became where I had nobody, my friends, I had good friends up there, but it was just, drinking buddies.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going to the bars a lot. Like, my shifts were like 4 days on, 4 days off. And then those 4 days off, I made good money up there, and I would blow it all. I mean, it was like I would go to the bar and just get drunk by myself. And if you had any, like, oh, I went to Florida one time. Oh, my God, you went to Florida? I'm from there. I'll buy you, like, all your drinks,
wow.
I was stupid, And so I ended up, living a lifestyle just of what I hated as a kid. I saw that as a kid growing up, what alcoholism does, and I became an alcoholic myself.
Oh, wow.
And it was to the point that I remember falling asleep under a vehicle. Like, I remember me and my buddies went out. So we drank so much I needed to close my eyes. I went outside in the parking lot and crawled underneath a vehicle and fell asleep underneath the vehicle for about 30 minutes. And like, my buddies were like, you could have died. They could have rolled over you and you would have been dead.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is the lifestyle, I live in. And July 4th of 2015 is when it all kind of came to a head. And I remember going out, and a couple of people, I was with, and they were going to go to another bar, and I was like, I'm going to go home. I'm tired. I'm going to go home. But I was really getting depressed, and I could feel it. And so I was like, all right. So
did you know like that's what that is that's coming on me, like I'm getting depressed type of thing, or was it just like I just
at that moment? Probably not, because I was pretty under the influence.
Gotcha.
So I remember going home, You know, and I don't know how many times I drove home. Now, like, it bothers me so much that I drove so many times drunk. And now I get so mad when I see people posting on social media of them drinking alcohol while driving. It infuriates me because I'm like, you know, and I judge myself because I'm like, I was one of those people that would do that. You know, it's not just about you. It's about the people you're putting, you know, at risk as well. You know, you never know. I read an article where a mom was coming home. She had just given birth, and her baby suffered, you know, some critical condition because drunk driver hit him head on. So,
and it always seems like,
and the drunk driver's always fine.
Yeah, it's almost like it's always the other person that gets hurt, killed, maimed, and it's like the drunk driver walks away from the thing, or, you know, minor scratches and bruises. So
I drove home, and I remember I was drinking a bottle, and I went to the bathroom, and I you know, I've been on blood pressure medication for most of my life, so I remember going to the bathroom and at my apartments, and I looked in the mirror, and I just saw myself, and I pushed the mirror, like I was just like pushing myself. I'm like, you're an idiot, you know. And when I pushed the mirror, it like opened up, and all these pills were right there. And I was like, "You're such an idiot. Why don't you just end it all?" And so I remember grabbing the pills and started taking them, you know, one by one. And I was like, "Well, this is for this. This is for that." And I just started popping them back. And at that point, I started texting a couple people that I was like, you know, I texted, I think, my brother. I texted my mom, and I just basically texted them, "I'm sorry. I love you. I'm sorry." And so I texted a girl that I was talking to at the time, and I don't remember. I remember like falling out, and I remember writing on the mirror that was on the ground, like a long mirror, "I'm sorry." That's all I wrote. And next morning, I woke up. You know, as a miracle as that is, I woke up to banging on the door. I'm like, who's that? You know, my roommates are gone on summer vacation, and I was like, you know, who's that? And so I looked at my phone. I have, you know, bazillion, you know, missed calls and text messages and stuff.
Yeah.
And then my phone starts ringing again, and it was one of the officers I worked with. And so I answered, and he goes, "Hey, man, you need to open up your door." And I was like, "You don't know where I live. How do you know where I live?" He just comes to the door, and at that moment, I heard like the radios click in the background. I was like, I knew this is them checking in on me.
Mm-hmm.
So they come in, and, you know, my gun's on the kitchen table, you know, my badge and all that stuff. They come in, they see the gun at first, and they automatically all kind of get a little wigged out. And I was like, "Listen, guys, I'm not gonna do anything, you know." And so they realized, you know, I was in law enforcement. They realized kind of the sensitivity, because in law enforcement, there's a high, you know, there's so many people in law enforcement that kill themselves or deal with this.
Yeah.
And so they kind of realized what was going on. I remember the sergeant being super compassionate towards me. And long story, they took me to the hospital, and my brother texted me, "Hey, I'm coming to get you." And I was like, "You know, you live all the way in Florida. That's like, you know, 12 hours away. What do you mean you're coming to get me?" You know, he goes, "Well, you're coming back home. You're going to move back to Florida." I said, "No, my life's here." He goes, "You just tried ending it. You're coming back to Florida." So I'm super appreciative for my brother. You know,
wow,
he risked his job. He just dropped everything and came up there for me.
Wow.
So, you know, with all that, I moved back to Florida, and it was one of those things that I came back. I lived with my parents. I came back, and I was dealing with the same thing. I was dealing with depression and dealing with the same thoughts, you know, having to deal with it. And I was going to the bars, and I was getting drunk. And it wasn't until one night where there was like the moment that kind of changed everything, the way I was thinking, where I went out to the bars in the villages by myself. You know, I just went out, and it wasn't, for me, it wasn't like partying. It was just like almost like a medication.
Right.
And so I went out, and I remember walking to my car, and I remember falling in the bushes, and that was the last thing I remember. Next morning, I woke up in my bed at my parents' house with leaves in my hair. No recollection of how I got home. No one came in to pick me up. No, I didn't call anybody. It's not like somebody was like, "Oh, how do you know? We'll get you home." It was none of that. I drove home, and you know, I ran to the window and looked at my car, like, how bad is the damage? You know,
oh
did
my
I
goodness,
kill somebody last night? What did I do? You know, and at that moment, I was like, it's not. I was like, the problem is me. I was like, you know, I can't stop. I can't continue placing the blame on other people or my situation or my current circumstance. As the problem is it's really up to me.
Yeah.
And it's up to me to change the direction I go. I could continue down this path, and I so self-destructive, and I could see it. And with even that that moment right there, I realized that there was a long journey ahead, and even now, sometimes I can feel that attack come on. So it's not like I believe that God delivered me 100%, and I give Him all the glory and praise for that. But it is still up to me daily whether I continue to walk in the direction that God has put me on, or I can go right back, because God will deliver you from something, but you can walk back to it. And I know it's up to me to stay out of that mindset, not to entertain those thoughts, not to put myself in situations. I know that if I was to go to a bar right now and go get drunk, it's not like, oh, I'm not going to deal with depression anymore because God delivered me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, I'm going to go right back to it. So
what? So you're back home. You're in that place. You're still kind of doing the same thing. I mean, you leave the circumstance and that specific locale, but then you just brought it back with you, and then you start kind of realizing, this is something with me. This is something internal. At what point did it start turning around? Like what was the catalyst to say, hey, this is where I started changing for the better?
I think it was a little bit after that. I started realizing I had to change this, and I started trying to make better decisions. But I'm a dude. I make mistakes all the time, and I actually ended up meeting my wife around that time, a little bit afterwards, same year. And I believe that God really did place her in my life at the right moment, at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And she helped me with the healing process as well. But she wasn't in church, she wasn't, and she just wasn't, a church going person.
So it was more of obviously from what you're saying, back when you were in Virginia and everything, there was a loneliness there.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was helping with that component of it.
Yeah, and this is, again, I know she knows what I'm about to say, so I don't want other people to misinterpret this. She just filled up a little bit of a void.
Mm-hmm.
There was still a void there, but she filled up a little bit of a void that made it feel a little bit better.
Sure, yeah.
So it was like putting a Band-Aid on the wound. And so
give you a little bit of something to kind of hope for,
exactly.
Live for a future.
But even after we were together, I remember being at the rental house, and I remember one night I just told her I had an episode, really a breakdown, and I told her to leave, and she knew what that meant because I was ready. I was ready to, she had to take the guns away from me. I was ready to pull a trigger.
Whoa.
And she had to like physically get on top of me, because I was freaking out. I was crying and screaming, and I was dealing with all this stuff, and so she had to really just stand in the gap right there and help me out. It wasn't really till and this is not like a plug for bread breakers. It wasn't really until after I
plug away, man. Plug away. I'm just
bread
kidding.
breakers. It wasn't until after
breadbreakers.com. Did you get that?
It wasn't until after I started attending church on a regular basis.
Yeah.
That I realized that things were getting a little bit better, and I knew where to put my energy into. Let's sort of say.
But you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but were you guys were attending church somewhere else?
Yeah,
somewhat.
we were going to another denominational church, and I remember sitting there, and great church. I love the pastor.
Mm-hmm.
The condition for him marrying us is we had to do premarital counseling, and I love that.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea.
Everyone that's considering getting married needs to do counseling, and even after you get married, do counseling. I think that counseling is one of those things that a lot of people kind of were brought up to think like, oh, something's wrong, you need counseling.
Yeah,
counseling I think is better to do it before you need it than after when you need it,
or even just I was talking with someone recently about this exact same kind of mindset, and I was just like, if you go to the gym and you're healthy and you're strong and you look good, And then you're like, hey, you know what? I want to take it to the next level, or I want to learn some new stuff. I'm going to go 6 weeks with a trainer to, quote unquote, counsel me and help me. Nobody thinks like, oh, you failed. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
But like, so in almost everything else in life, it's like, yeah, man, you're taking it to the next level. Wow, you're getting even better at this, right? But then in marriage, for some reason, it's like if you go to get counseling, oh, I wonder what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that's this is a topic for another conversation, but I think that's by design of the world, because the world tries to set you up for failure. I think with your marriage.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I think that's by design. As soon as you start trying to get help, you're just like, oh, something must be wrong. I remember anytime I get flowers for Hannah, that's just a random occasion. Oh, what you do?
Yeah, I've had that happen in the store too. Oh, somebody getting out of trouble?
Is it her birthday? Is it a special occasion? Like, no, it's just it's a Friday afternoon. She's had a long week. I want it to be something she likes. One of her, again, one of the greatest books that you've recommended for our marriage was The 5 Love Languages. And
love that book,
she loves receiving gifts. That's one of her love languages. And so so receiving small stuff like that, it means the world to her. And so I think that it's important to do that. But, again, right away, the world's like, oh, what'd you do wrong?
Yeah.
And so, we did premarital counseling with this pastor, and it was great. And I remember sitting there one Sunday morning, and it was right before Easter, and I was sitting there, and I was like, I know there's more. A lot of people are like, all right, there's got to be more to this.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know there's more. I've experienced more. What am I doing?
Right. Oh, okay.
And so I remember sitting there, and I told Hannah, this is the wrong attitude to have, so I'm not recommending this to anybody.
Right.
But I remember telling her, I was like, next Sunday I'm not coming here. She was, where are you going? It was Easter Sunday too, so her parents were expecting us to be there. Like, it was a big thing.
Oh, no.
And I was like, I'm going to Bread Breakers. And she goes, what about me? I was like, do whatever you want.
Oh, my goodness.
and I wasn't really thinking about it. And I wasn't really trying
Bread Breakers, breaking up marriages one at a time.
I wasn't trying to be like come or don't,
Yeah.
That's kind of, I was like, I was just like, when you're drowning, you're like,
you're at a breaking
grasping
point
for
yeah.
anything. That was like me grasping. I was like, I just got to go.
Yeah.
And so praise God. I'm being serious because I every once in a while I'll go back through my pictures and I'll see pictures of, just our journey. I love doing that. And Hannah, she grew up Baptist. And so she grew up in a quieter church and stuff like that. And I remember taking her to her first apostolic, service, and she was just kind of like, I don't know about this, And then when I took her to Bread Breakers, I was like, it didn't occur to me until like I got there, and I was like, oh man, they speak in tongues. She probably is going to be weirded out by this. I was like, but you know what? I was like, it is what it is, and so we talked about it a little bit, and we were so appreciative to you and Summer for going. You guys, that drive was a horrendous drive from basically Ocala all the way to Denellen, and you guys were there to really, I wouldn't say just help her out, with Bible study, because it helped me out, tremendously, because I got to learn a lot, but that's kind of shifted my focus. Now there have been times where I've lost focus on things. And I'm not ashamed to say that, even at the beginning of this year, I told Hannah, just as a precautionary thing, I was going through some stuff. I was going through some funk. We were going through some stuff in our marriage, that we were just, I was like, and I told her, I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm not even going to pretend. Basically, I was like, you need to take the guns. I was like, I don't think I'm there. I was like, but I don't want to. In the middle of the night, you go to sleep, and all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm done, and I just, I was like, I said, you need to help me here, and and I didn't know if our marriage is gonna, last, and I don't want to be one of those people, and growing up, I think a lot of people tend to put like a negative light on some of these testimonies. Like, if you were delivered from alcoholism, oh, praise God, 15 years sober, great. And I'm not saying that's not great. Yeah. But if you were to say, I had an addiction to pornography and God delivered me, people are like, oh, shh. Right, I had an addiction to or I dealt with suicide. Oh, well, we don't really, that's kind of dark and morbid. Let's keep it quiet. Right. And I was talking to somebody recently. I was like, stop trying to rob me of my testimony. And I was like, don't let the world rob you of your testimony, of basically saying, he brought you from here and now you're here. Don't be like, well, try and downplay it because you're afraid of what people might think. I was like, I don't care. People might think I'm a crazy whack job that's had, a really rough past. They're absolutely right. Yeah. God's brought me from where I was to where I am. But it's by my choice too. Cause, it was one of the guys from Texas. I think I won't mention his name, but he had mentioned basically God will meet you where you're at. Mm-hmm. But it's really up to us to follow God back out of that situation.
Yeah.
Because I think what happens is the church will sometimes meet people where they're at and kind of give them a little blanket, be like, it's going to be okay, and then kind of walk away and don't kind of help nurture people. That's one thing I like about Bread Breakers. And I know we're not the only church that does this, but they kind of pull people out of where they're at. So, they kind of help them along. It's not like we're going to give you a goodie basket and send you, 2 or 3 good, encouraging texts, and that's where we leave you.
Yeah, kind of like a walk. There's a difference between walking with someone for a season or a time to really help them get back to strength and really get them where they need to be versus kind of like you're driving by and you throw a goodie basket out the window type of thing because that's your Christian duty.
Yeah. And Hannah and I, we were talking about that recently. We were talking about basically when do you kind of give up on somebody? Not like in a bad way, but like. And I told her, I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm so glad people didn't give up on me. I was like, we don't need to have that mentality. I was like, now we don't want to be taken advantage of. I was like, in all honesty, if it was me with me, I would have given up on me a long time ago. And I was like, and people haven't given up on me. God hasn't given up on me. I was like, again, it's up to me to push on. But that's the thing is God is he has all control.
Mm-hmm.
But like you mentioned last night, he holds back some of that control because he's given, us control.
Yeah.
And so, God can make me, like, oh, I'm perfect, I'm a perfect being, but, it's one of those things I have to daily, work on who I am and who I'm going to become. Like you had mentioned, God had made the shoes of the Israelites where they didn't wear it out for what, how many years, 40 years, whatever.
Yeah.
But he made them go get their food. He could have done the same thing with the food situation. Mm-hmm. He could have fed them one time. They're good to, for 40 years and they have to worry about going to collect food. And same thing. God could have put me in a position where, I'm healed. I don't have to deal with any of this stuff.
Right.
But it's not like that. It's I have to daily wake up in the mornings and, the real estate goes up and down. And when it goes up and down, I feel like so does my spirit,
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I'm like, I'm in a good mood. You got like 3 deals going on, 4 deals. And then all of a sudden, like all deals, collapse. And you're just like, I don't know where the money's going to come in. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
I'm stressed out. And then I feel my mood. So I have to wake up in those mornings where I feel like that and be like, I got to push through. There are plenty of times where on Sunday mornings where I'm leading worship and I'm like, I do not want to be up here. I want to be down there receiving something.
Uh-huh.
I want to be at home in bed, watching the live stream and be like,
right.
Praise God. And,
honey, come raise my hand for me. I want to worship the Lord, but I'm too tired.
We felt that way last night. We were running late, and I was like, I really wish they would live stream the Wednesday night services again. But it was one of those things, It's you have to continue to push forward daily.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a friend of mine, and they were asking, they're going through depression. So this is for people that are going through depression, right now. How do you overcome it? Well, really, I know it's cliche, give it to God, but it's more than just giving it to God. You can't be like, well, Jesus take the wheel, and then you take both hands off the wheel and expect, it'd be like a Tesla and it just drive, its course. God's gonna be like, you got 2 hands?
Yeah.
So he expects you to do your part in it as well. And so I was like, I had mentioned this a few Sundays ago, but Jamie had said something about her diet, and she goes, what she allows. And I was like, same thing spiritually. And we were talking about that. And, what you watch, on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime. Name your poison. What you listen to, and stuff like that really affects your health.
Yeah.
Mentally and spiritually. And a lot of people fail to realize that. Like, music is a huge thing for me. Like, I love music. I've always had a passion for music. I can listen to all types of music. And it's very easy for me to just get even lost in the beats. And I'm like, and Hannah catches me sometimes. I'm like on the radio, and I'm like, oh, this is a cool beat. I'm like listening to it, and I'm not even paying attention to the lyrics. And Hannah's like, are you listening to what they're saying? I'm like, oh my God. Like,
Right.
And I'm like, I did not know. I was listening to that. I was like, that's a cool, bass. I'm like listening to like the small little instruments you barely hear.
Right.
And but it affects you spiritually. And it's like eating, salads for, months, and all of a sudden you just binge out on like, junk food.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna negatively affect you. And I was like, you have to do your part and be careful what you listen to, what you watch. It's easy to try and fill those voids with small things to make you feel better. So some people, it's shopping.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily alcohol and drugs. A lot of people are like, oh, that they're dealing with it because they want to go drink, and no, some people are like, oh, I got to go out and go shopping. Sometimes it's a positive outlet. Sometimes it's people that go to the gym, and that was me for a while. The gym was a great outlet, and I kind of wish it was still that marriage weight, but it was a great outlet. But I did realize that it was taking a lot more of my time than it should have.
Yeah.
It became an addiction where I was counting everything I ate and doing everything because it took my attention off of my problems.
Yeah. So the focus. I mean, you mentioned that earlier about the focus, like your focus.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big piece of when people go through things is the focus. I actually made the video this morning about focus and perspective when it comes to depression and suicidal thoughts, and went through Philippians and talked about how Paul is in a prison writing some of the most incredible scriptures that we quote all the time, trying to give the church at Philippi encouragement. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. That's in Philippians. The peace of God that passes all understanding. That's in Philippians. My God shall supply all my need. Right? That's in Philippians. And so is I can do all things through Christ. Mm-hmm. And this is all written from a prison cell.
Yeah.
But you can see, but the focus, where he had his focus is really, so you temporarily changed your focus to working out, but it just became another addiction that doesn't quite fulfill because it didn't have the spiritual substance that you really needed.
Yeah. And I think, just by saying that right there, your location where you're at in your circumstances or whatever should not be your location spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
It may be where you're at physically. He was in a prison cell. That's where he was physically, but spiritually and mentally, that dude was on a whole other playing field.
Right.
He wasn't in, the pits of despair. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure that when he laid there and he just kind of looked around, he could have easily sunk into that, man, here I am all by myself. There's,
rats gnawing at me, right? Roaches all over the place.
You hear that little like bloop. The typical prison cell, you hear that little dripping. It's always in every movie. But it's one of those things that you could easily fall victim to the where am I
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so going back to the shark dive, I had to focus on a lot of different things. So when I first got into the water, I know how to swim. I've grew up in Florida. I love the water. So I know how to swim. I used to make the joke that I'm Cuban. I was born swimming, and so
he's Cuban. He's the one that said that joke.
Exactly. So I jumped in the water, and you're scared. Like I said, you look into the water, you can't see anything, and all of a sudden you see a shadow and it's coming towards you. You're like, oh my God, please don't be hungry today. And the gear that I was given was backwards. The snorkel was backwards. And so I'm trying to get to my position on this rope because we're holding onto the rope that's attached to the boat because the currents could pull you away. And you'd be looking down and all of a sudden you're a mile away from the boat. Be like, where did I
then
go?
You'd be really serious.
Yeah. So we're they tell you to hold onto the rope, and they tell you to wear the gloves because on the rope are sea wasp. and they will sting you. So you have to be careful, because if you don't have those gloves on, you're sliding, you can get stung by sea wasps, and you don't want to hold on to that rope anymore.
Oh wow!
So I'm like, oh my, they're like naming things. I'm like, do I really want to get this water? Like, just keep the money. I'm good. Just give it back to the land. And but the snorkel was messed up, and so I'm in the water, and I felt like I was drowning, and I normally don't panic, but at that moment I started to panic. I'm like, there's a shark literally swimming like 10 feet away. I'm worried about these sea wasps. There's jellyfish, but the jellyfish don't sting, but you see all these jellyfish all around you. And anytime I would go to breathe, I would get just a glass full of salt water, and I'm choking.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, man, this is, so the girl comes over. She goes, sir, do you need a life vest? And I was like, no, I'm okay. She goes, do you know how to swim? I was like, yes, I know how to swim. And you could tell she goes back to the boat, and I hear her, and she goes, hey, Captain, he needs a life vest. He said no, but clearly he needs a life vest. And I'm like, excuse me. And so I swam back to the boat, and I pull out, and I'm getting frustrated at this point. I'm like, what is going on? Like, these girls that are out here that are scared are doing perfect, and I'm over here just like flailing around. And so I take off the mask, I look, and I was like, oh man. So he gave me a better snorkel, and I jumped in. And to me, that kind of stuck with me a little bit more spiritually, because you can go into a situation thinking you're all geared up.
Yeah.
And you're not ready for what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have, it was on me. I should have done the check. I know what's, I'm not some person that's never seen snorkel gill. I should have checked everything.
Yeah.
And so that was on me. And so I started thinking about it. I was like, sometimes, even now, where I'm better, I know a lot more spiritually. I know what to expect, how to overcome certain things. If I feel down, I know that sometimes it's just because it's a rainy day and I feel down. Sometimes I know this more of a spiritual aspect where I'm coming under attack. And so sometimes I know when I'm praying for something, and this is for the people that are that have been in church for a while, that they have good roots. But every once in a while they get that feeling that they're depressed. They can't explain why.
Mm-hmm.
It's because you're going into that situation with your gear not all the way in tune and checked. Because there have been times where I'm like, I think I'm good. I'm going to pray about this. But, I haven't been reading the Bible like I should. I haven't been reading the Word, or maybe I haven't been in prayer as much as I should, or focusing on other things. Because you can be great at certain things in your life, but if your marriage is all jacked up, you're not going to be an effective tool in God's kingdom. I think that if you're great at your marriage, and you're a great, singer, and you can speak really good words, but you don't know how to handle your kids, you're not an effective tool in God's kingdom. And the enemy can slip in those little things like depression and different small little seeds that can cause huge damage. And one of the things that I think that it was generational for me was my mom dealt with a lot of depression and stuff, and so it's easy for me to be like, well, this is the way my mom was,
right,
or this is the way so and so was,
Yep.
We can easily put the blame on other people. My mom dealt with a lot of stuff, growing up, and she still has to fight these battles. And we were talking about that the other day, and she said something. Why you bring up my past? And I told her, and I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, I was like, it's not about the past. I said, you need to be happy about your past. And she kind of looked at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, not because it happened to you, but because it happened to you. Mm-hmm. That you could be an example and a tool for other people. So I was telling Hannah the other day, this is before you had asked me to get on the podcast. I told her, I was like, I really just feel like this huge pull towards people that are drunk drivers. I get so angry, when I see that. I get this huge pull towards people that are dealing with like depression, and I want to be there for them. And I've dealt with so much in my time here on Earth, that I've experienced so much that I want to help people that are going through the same experiences to overcome them,
right, or
help people avoid them. And it's not because like, I'm by no means am I an expert or a doctor or, certified, or by any means, but I've experienced a lot of this stuff and I've gone through it with God. Yeah. And so the thing is, like when we were out there on the boat, I told Hannah, I was like, it's good because they told us how many times I've been out there. I was like, it's good to hear that. And I was like, because if it said, again, if the captain,
This is our first time going out, guys.
if Captain Alex said, hey, I've read about this a lot. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos, but this is my first time, guys. So give me a good round of applause. I'll be like, we're getting off the boat.
Right.
And so I was like, it doesn't matter if you're super knowledgeable about something. I can sit here and spit statistics and stuff, but know nothing of what somebody's going through. I can't really be, they can't really relate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm grateful that God has put me in some of these situations.
Yeah.
And given me the brain to realize that I need him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not all the time was I was quick to reach out to him.
Right.
I tried doing it on my own. But I realized that I needed him to be that my focus.
Yeah.
But he put me in situations not just because let's see how Aaron can hold up, but I really truly feel like I went through some of these situations so that I can help other people avoid those situations or be there for them when they're going through, so I can be understanding. Because it's not really easy when people are saying I'm going through the depression. It's like, just put a smile on, you got a new car, but you see all these people in Hollywood killing themselves.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, they got new cars.
Yeah,
new
depression's
houses.
definitely not relegated to people that don't have money. I mean, that's one reason why people
Exactly.
can get depressed, but there's a bazillion reasons why you can be depressed, and sometimes you can be depressed and you don't even know what in the world the reason is.
And sometimes it is a chemical imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I don't want people to be like, we can't take medication. That's you need to talk to your pastor. You need to talk to
A doctor.
God. You need to talk to a doctor and
Right,
kind of
yeah.
figure that out. So don't be like, I can't take any medication when you need it.
Yeah.
But I'm on blood pressure medication. I've prayed about blood pressure. I've tried different diets. I could probably be a little bit better on my diets, but I'm like, hey, I could pop a pill. So
We're gonna have to edit that part out. Don't listen to that. Don't listen to that.
But so I'm like, all right. So here's the thing: you can have situations you're going through that you can clearly see that you need somebody's help. And that was the problem for me, is I didn't reach out to some people.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that was the biggest issue when I was a kid, is when they said just pray about it. Well, at that time, I didn't just need to pray about it. I needed somebody there. So
Right.
what I want to be for somebody, and I encourage people that are going through something, is to reach out. It doesn't have to be your spouse. It could be somebody in the church. It could be somebody that clearly can give you clear, good, godly, sound advice. That's not going to tell you, oh yeah, just go get a couple beers.
Hopefully in the church that's not what they're
Yeah.
gonna.
You'll be surprised.
You just need to go binge over the weekend. You'll be all
You'll
right.
be surprised. Be like, hey, come over for a campfire. You come up, you're like, what is that? Is that
Right.
from your neighbors? Oh no, man. But seriously, it's one of those things.
It's for my stomach's sake. My stomach really needs it.
But it's one of those things that I had to learn, and it's very hard now. And I've talked about this before. Communication. And the enemy will try to go after your communication. And he'll try to put you in this place of solitude and solitary where you're just like, you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to, sometimes you're ashamed.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know how to put it into words.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that you have to really kind of push through. So I encourage people to reach out to somebody. Again, like I was talking to somebody, I was with my wife, and I told them, I was like, obviously I can't be there for you, because this person, was the opposite sex. And I was like, I can't be there for you. I was like, but if you ever need somebody, reach out to my wife. We can always be there together for you.
Yeah.
I think that if you're a godly man, you should not be reaching out to women in the church.
Yeah.
Or have them reach out to you, unless it's like a quick, like, hey, is band practice at certain time? But
yeah, counsel a married man or really a single man going over to some single lady's house, we're just giving Bible studies.
Yeah.
Bible studies can definitely go south, folks.
Yeah. So I think it's one of those things that I think, but you need to be there for people. People need to be there for you, and that's what you were talking about, the ecclesia being a community together. Because that is the key thing. There needs to be a communication. Now, I wouldn't recommend going to somebody that's a huge gossiper in the church. Then they're going to be like, everyone's going to know your business. But
Definitely not.
But you do need to reach out to people that are your elders or people that have a good. Now, go
Right.
to people that have clear, positive fruits.
Right. Don't go through it alone.
Yeah, and you can see, like, for instance, my wife. Shout out to Evelyn and Jamie. My wife has gone to Evelyn and Jamie on countless occasions. but you can clearly see by their fruits that they have produced because of their consistency, and that's a huge thing, is consistency of their walk with God.
Right.
They're kingdom minded. They have that mentality that they're there for other people, and that's what we need to be. And that's why I want to be for other people. So it's one of those things that if you're going through something, chances are I can closely relate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, everybody's situation is different, but definitely going through those things, and you've got, in your story, your history, I mean, you've got a mix of both. You've got hurt and pain and depression caused from, religion,
stuff,
right? Religious scars. And then you've got stuff that even like you leave that and you're free from this, this religious hurt and pain and all this stuff. And now you're in the world and you've got hurt there and situational stuff there that's gone on, and you know what it's like to kind of battle substance abuse and even what we'll call it, quote unquote, a healthy addiction, and you're in working out in the gym and that kind of thing. And so you've got a long history of battling with this. I mean, you can even see, like you mentioned, with getting with Hannah, and there's a void, a partial void that was filled, but it's not quite enough. And so you've got a lot of experience to really help a lot of different people going through various different types of depression. But the thing that you mentioned earlier about God didn't just take it, and you've had times even since you've been consistent, you've been walking with God, that you've had times where it starts to rise back up, it starts to try to gnaw at you again, pull you back again. And so it's like the folks that they come to God, and it's powerful, it's miraculous. We've got several in Bread Breakers that have this testimony, right? I prayed, or I received the Spirit, or I got baptized, or repented, whatever, and God immediately took the craving for drugs and alcohol away from me, or he immediately healed me of this, or immediately emotionally healed me. Yeah. But your testimony is one of the ones that is, God did not deliver me completely from this immediately. He's given me the strength to overcome on a regular basis. And so, again, the testimony of the immediate deliverance is powerful, and we need that, and it's awesome, but God does not do that for everybody. And so you're one of those testimonies that people can come to and say, okay, I'm one of the ones that God didn't. And what do I do?
And I don't want people to get it twisted, basically, where sometimes people get envious of, well, why didn't God just deliver me?
Right.
And I look at it because I've been in that boat where I'm like, why can't I just get over this? Like, God, clearly, you can make, snap of fingers, and I'm fine. I'm like a speck of dust. I mean, kind of help me out here, But I am so grateful now because my mentality, I think it's a huge. Your mentality has to change.
Yeah.
Again, I like listening to motivational speeches and stuff, but you have to be very cautious because they're talking about self-manifestation and all this stuff, and they kind of push God out of the whole picture.
Yeah.
But there is some truth to that where you really do have to have that mentality, like, I'm going to overcome this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to push past this. It's fighting against your flesh. It's fighting against the comfort zone of just kind of falling into that like the kind of depressed state. On a rainy day, it is a lot harder for me to get up and make the bed and do my duties and stuff like that, go out and work and stuff like that. Whereas on a sunny day, I'm like, okay, cool, but I have to push past that. And there's no be like, oh, boss, hey, can't go to work today because it's raining.
Yeah. It's like David encouraged himself in the Lord, but he did have to do something.
Your mentality has to be there. Your mentality has to be like, you know what? I wasn't delivered, but it doesn't matter. I'm happy regardless because I have the deliverance, but I'm not. You know what I'm saying? And the other thing is, yes, I went through all this and I tried. That's the thing, and it hurts me to see young people inside the church, and not just like inside this church. I'm talking about in general.
Yeah.
Young people that tend to try and find their identity in the world, or try and fill that void in the world. And I used to hate it when you would have older people come up to you and be like, well, you don't want to go out there and do this because, you know, and you're like 80 years old. You know, what your way of going out was, you know, listening to swing music and your ankles were showing. Like, come on. But you know, you don't respect elders, and I really think that young people really need to respect their elders because you have no idea what they've gone through.
Yeah.
But the you know, as young people, we don't really respect and give the true honor to our elders like we should.
Right.
And so for me, I'm a little bit younger, obviously, and so I try and look at it this way. Like,
I don't know, 28. You're
I know.
Pushing 30,
I know.
man.
Somebody said something the other day. I was like, "What?" I had to Google it. I was like, "What does this mean?" I was like, "This is getting sad." But I was like, "So here's the thing: is take it from somebody who is not like holier than thou, trying to, you know, tell you to stay in the ranks of the church, but telling you like, listen, you cannot find what you're looking for out there. Now, if you don't want to, you know, be bound by the church rules or whatever, that's between you, God, and whatever. But really, when it comes down to, if you're really trying to find your who you are, your answer, or anything like that, it's not out there. I mean, I clearly searched and searched and searched, and I knew the truth. Like, it's not like I'm not like some guy that you know never heard the gospel, never, you know, got to experience the infilling of the spirits and being baptized, and then gets to see miracles firsthand. I'm talking about I experienced all that, still went out into the world, and expecting something different and better. Right. I mean, it just amazes me that I was that foolish to believe that. Yeah. And second, it pains me to see young people fall for the same trap that I fell for. And it's like, you know, you can only do so much. Like, hey, you know, but I really, if whoever this reaches, wherever you're at, the answer's not on the grass is always greener on the other side. The answer's not on the other side of that fence. I mean, you really need to find, you know, joy comes from the Lord. And that's the honest truth, because there were times where like I had prayed about it and I literally had a joy that I could not explain. I mean, I'm like, why am I so happy? Yeah. You know, everything around me's burning and I'm still happy. Right. And that really only comes from God. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, you're, again, just to think about where you were, you know, a few years ago in a bathroom, popping pills, ready to take your life, falling over in the bushes, you know, and now, you know, just
and I enjoy
it's amazing.
Life, and I enjoy life so much better. Like Hannah and I, we went on this vacation, and I was waking up, and I'm not a big morning person, but I was waking up like 7, 8 o'clock in the mornings, ready to go, like, let's go do something. And I told her, I was like, you know what's funny is, you know, before when we used to go on a lot of vacations, like when we first got together, we would go out, we would get drunk, and it was usually me. Hannah, I've never seen Hannah like really underneath the influence. And
she was the DD.
Yeah, she was like pulling my hair back, you know, like, don't throw up on yourself. Right. But for me, it was I was always trying to, even in those moments, I was still trying to, you know, fill this void that, you know. Yeah. And like we went on this vacation, and I got to actually enjoy the vacation, wake up the next morning and enjoy the vacation. It wasn't like I had a hangover. It was just, you know, and I just got to experience things so much. You get to experience life so much better when you're walking with God by your side. And I mean, it's an incredible experience, and I want other people to have that. And you can't just shove it at people. But I'm here as a living testimony that it's achievable, it's possible. It's not like this, like, you know, secret. You know, you have to do this 7-step process, and then you get it's you can do it right now. Yeah, you could do it, you know, by yourself in prayer, and then from that moment on, you have to have that accountability. Right. But it starts with you. It starts with the person making up in their mind, like, hey, you know, because if I change for my mom and dad, if my mom and dad let me down, I'm gonna go right back because I changed for them. Right. You have to change you have to want it. And that's why I encourage other people that want it for other people. Like, I've had family members like, hey, you need to be there for them, and you need to be, and I'm like, I'll be there for them, don't get me wrong. They're like, well, you should be more understanding. I'm like, I'm understanding, but you also have to understand, for me being in their shoes, right, if I didn't want it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You can help somebody, but what's going to happen is they're going to take advantage of you and get what they can out of you.
Yeah.
And then kind of like, go their own way once you realize. But the thing is, the person that is going through the situation, the person that's going through the fire has to decide they have to get out of the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And again, once you get out of the fire, don't be ashamed that you went through the fire,
right?
Because that is your testimony.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's awesome, man. I think God has done just an incredible work in you. Obviously, he's always still
Daily.
Working on us, right?
Daily.
We're always still learning and growing. But it's wow, it's a powerful thing. It's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. This was incredible testimony. I really think it's going to help many people as we get it out there. So again, Aaron Becerril, you're awesome, man. I'm glad you're my friend. Glad to know you guys. You guys rock.
I survived the sharks.
I'm glad you survived the sharks. But again, thanks so much for being on with us. Absolutely. And yeah, we're going to continue to get this thing out there.
Real quick, once again, I want to say thank you, for your leadership, for your consistency in doing what you do. A lot of places, what their leaders they'll start something and kind of die off on certain things, and but you've been consistent in every area that you start, and I really do appreciate that. I'm not just saying that for brownie points, but I do appreciate it because I know that you're one of the few people that I can go to and truly appreciate their sound advice. It's godly advice. I'm not just kind of because I know you'll shoot it straight. Sometimes I don't go to you for those reasons.
Exactly, right.
Like, hey, babe, what do you think about this? Don't go to Steve.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like you're shooting straight. So either people will come because they want it straight, or they're not because they don't. Yeah. Well, again, I really appreciate you coming on, man. And we're we'll just continue to pray that this thing reaches who it needs to reach, and that people will be blessed by it. In Jesus' name. Amen. And we're going to end it right there with that. Thanks again, Aaron, for coming on with us. And folks, don't forget, like, subscribe, share, podcast at breadbreakers.com if you would like to chime in, comment, or ask a question. Love you. God bless you. We pray that this has helped you, and we'll catch you on the next podcast episode.